It's about time to begin. I'm going to ask Councilman Tony Canarito to come up. He's going to give the introduction for Comptroller Hagar. Before I do, I missed somebody that's here with us today that's also helping out, and that's Kevin Martin over here with Mountain View Productions. He is videoing all of this. So if you are speaking today, make sure that you speak into the microphone because he's recording all of this, and this will end up on YouTube. So we're going to make everybody YouTube famous today, all right? We are on a very tight schedule. Several folks down here from Austin, of course, and they've got to get back, including the comptroller himself. So we are going to end at 1 o'clock. If you have questions that you would like to ask of the panelists, then bring there's index cards on your table. Bring that index card with your question on it to Miss Gina Pence, our chamber director, right up in front of me here, and we'll get those questions answered for you from the panelists. When we end here at 1 o'clock, some of these panelists may be able to hang around for a little bit longer. If you've got questions, you can certainly hang around and ask, but we do have a drop dead time at 1 o'clock. We've got to finish up today to make sure that we keep all of your schedules correct. So without further ado, I will invite Tony Cantarino, councilman for City of Harker Heights. He is going to introduce our comptroller.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Harker Heights Chamber of Commerce, the City of Harker Heights, and our neighboring cities, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest speaker for today, Texas Comptroller Glenn Hagar.
All right, now Tony told me that he was going to be very short, and normally when people say they're going to be short, they turn into be really long, but I'm going to tell you what, you are a man of your word, and thank you for that, Tony. That was one of the better introductions I've ever had of all the years I've been in elected office, so give him a round of applause. Yeah, I say that sincerely, not just jokingly, because one of the things I always tell people when I'm going to speak, either before they call my assistant or come up, and people say, "Okay, I've got your bio here," and you know how staff is. I mean, they'll put like a 5-page bio together that's single space, and I go, "Okay, all I need you to say is Glenn Hagar, and that's it." And they think I'm kidding. So, wow, you took me real. So thank you, Tony. Again, I appreciate that. But it's good to be with you. It's great to be here in Harker Heights. It's great to be in Bell County. Always good to be back here again. Thank you. One, it's great to see you. Number two, you got me out of Austin today, so thank you for that. That is a really good thing to be able to be outside of Austin. But, you know, I wanted not just to talk about water, because we're obviously, we have Chairwoman Pop here, as well as several legislators and folks that are able to talk about the importance of water, which I want to talk a little bit about the economy real quick, and then I'll kind of come back. But to start out, one of the things many years ago when I was a first-term legislator in the Texas House of Representatives, which was quite a few years ago, for those of you that do not know from a background standpoint, I grew up northwest out of Houston, so Highway 290 was very far away out of Houston. We lived in rural Texas. Of course, that is not so much rural anymore because Houston's growth as Texas continues to grow. Think about this. As you wake up this morning, hard to imagine, there's roughly about another 1,200 people that called Texas home today. Tomorrow when you wake up, guess what? There's about another 1,200 people that call Texas home tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. So half of that depends from year to year. Half of that is natural growth. Half of that are people that move from the other 49 states and that moved literally from somewhere around the world that moved to the state of Texas. And we have had that growth for quite some time and expected to continue to have that growth. We have businesses that are relocating to the state of Texas, new businesses that are starting in the state of Texas. It's obviously small businesses are the economic engine, the employers, the vast majority of the employers and the economic creativity. However, it's harder to quantify those. Mostly we end up talking about the big businesses that move here, relocation and or expansions, because that's easier to catch as a headline than a new business that's starting. But the point being is we're continuing to have that growth. And if you back up again, just kind of as I was mentioning when I was a first-term legislator, that was a very difficult budgeting session. We had an economic downturn. As we entered into that legislative session, we had roughly a $10 billion deficit. And $10 billion in 2023 is a lot of money. $10 billion in 2003 was a whole lot of money. And so we were trying to figure out, how do you cut this budget, continuing to focus on public education, health and human services, transportation, criminal justice, the things that we expect for funding of government. And so the budget was cut, and one of the things growing up on a family farm northwest out of Houston was important to me was water, and always has been. And the district that I represented was very critical and dependent on water, as every community is. The one thing that we all take for granted when we first wake up in the morning and we turn on the faucet, what do? We expect to have running water. Whether it's in our own individual households, our lives, or our businesses, everybody has to have it. So backing up, I was very trying to defend a portion of the budget. A fellow colleague of mine that was entering that year as well wanted to cut a portion of the budget and move the money somewhere else, and it had to do with water issues. And I walked up to the back mic to ask some questions, and then I finally asked the question. I said, what is the one thing that we have to have in life? What is the one and only thing that we have to have in life? And he kind of went off in another direction. So I came back to my question again. He went in another direction. I asked my question again. I think we went back 3 or 4 times, and finally I thought, I'm going to get you to answer this question. It's not complicated. All I want you to say is water. That's all I want you to say. I was thinking that as I was trying to think another angle. So finally I came again, and I said, what is the one thing that we all have to have in life to be able this, and this? And he looked at me and he said, Glenn, it's just called love. And that's when I thought, okay, you're not answering my question, and you know it's water, and I know it's water. And he just smiled really big. And so then we did talk a little bit about water after that. And then the next week when I showed back up, he went home, I went home. I showed up, and there on my desk Monday morning when I got back from the chamber and the House floor, there was a bookmark that I still have in my desk today. 3 offices later, moving to the state senate and moving as your controller and CFO for the state of Texas. And in my desk drawer is a bookmark. And what does it say on the front? Love. And every time I see that bookmark that says love, what do I think about? The importance of water that we have in the state of Texas. And fast forward in 20 years now, we have grown immensely in population. Again, we have grown in businesses. We have grown more in Fortune 500 companies, more than any other state in the nation. Texas has more. So we're growing in people. We're growing in population, whether it's here in Central Texas or wherever it's across the state of Texas in the 12 economic regions. If I stood in this spot when I got elected into office and was in my first term 9 years ago, I would have told you the state that you call home, that I call home, that we all share in common, would have been the 12th largest economy in the entire world. Think about that. Texas 9 years ago was the 12th largest economy in the world. Yet I can't tell you that today. You know why? Because in those short years, we've moved from number 12 to number 11 to number 10 to number 9. And I can't even say 9 anymore. You know why? Because today, in this year, Texas is literally the 8th largest economy in the entire world. Think about that. And part of that is because what you do in the state of Texas, businesses do. People ask me all the time, Glenn, why do people continue to move to Texas? And I tell them the answer is really simple. It's the same reason that my family had a leap of faith in 1846 and came to Texas. You know why they came in 1846, and I'm a 6th-generation Texan? The same reason that families do today, for an economic opportunity for themselves and an economic opportunity for future generations. This legislative session, the antithesis happened to my first session. Instead of being a $10 billion shortfall, the legislature had a once-in-a-lifetime, a unique, a historical cash carryover balance. And so the question was, what do they do with this once in a lifetime, will never repeat itself, even with all the growth that we're having? We'll continue to probably next session. Sorry, let me clarify, members. Hope not this next special session that probably starts on Wednesday. I'm talking about the next real session in 2025. But the point is, even with very modest economic growth nationally and globally, We think that Texas will have a significant cash carryover balance in the next regular session as well, but nothing of historical or what they dealt with. And I bring all that up and say that in part because in my role as a CFO, my role as a former policymaker, obviously they make the decisions, they make the votes, but the thing that we had to focus on, in my opinion, with that once in a lifetime, that unique, that historical opportunity, was focus on things that matter for future generations. Focus on infrastructure funding in Texas, whether it's roads, whether it's broadband, high-speed internet capability, which we've talked about for rural economic development for years, but what did COVID teach us? It's not just about rural economic development. It's about your access to education, higher education, public education. It's about telemedicine. For goodness sakes, it's about communities just staying in contact with their next-door neighbors. It's about people literally having church service at home. Being able to have that infrastructure is critical, and the one that we're here to talk about more than any of them is having that one that's what? Water infrastructure. Because if we don't have that infrastructure, we won't be able to keep the economic engine of Texas going. And so, as you know, if you haven't voted, there is an election that's going on. Tomorrow is election day, and there's several constitutional amendments on that ballot. Those constitutional amendments support many different pieces of infrastructure. And I tell people all the time, the legislature, when they come into session, they might be able to work on one major issue. Maybe one major issue, if there's funding available, to work on one major issue for that legislative session for the next decade or 2 decades. The fact, because of the historical session we had, the historical cash carryover balance, the once in a lifetime, the unique, they could actually work on several issues at one time. That in itself was unprecedented. I ask you, encourage you to please, if you haven't early voted, which I have, I've checked that box. If you have not, I encourage you to vote tomorrow, because one of those propositions focuses on water infrastructure and funding. And if people ask me, what are the things that keep me up at night? For my own personal office, because I don't know if you noticed, as the tax collector, I say that smilingly because when I do walk in a room, some of you have heard me say this, I look for every single exit. And why? Because as your state tax collector, yes, I run the treasury. Yes, we forecast the state's economy and the revenues and what's going to happen. But when I say my 3 constitutional duties, the one that worries me and I look for the exits every time is when I tell you I'm the tax collector. And do you know why? Because my grandfather on my mom's side, Lowell Thompson, was a Baptist preacher. And I used to sit on the front row like Hugh. Representative Flores is right up here on the front, because as a kid they made me sit on the front. I couldn't sit on the back. I don't know why. I guess they thought I'd get in trouble. But I remember my grandfather would say they stoned the tax collector, sometimes in his sermons. So when I come to a good group like you, I get very nervous to remind you people that I'm your tax collector. But as your tax collector, as the person that looks over, the one thing that we have to focus on is the economic opportunities of where we're going as a state. And one of those is making sure that we have that water infrastructure. And as the person, if I'm looking at what worries me the most, if it's internally as your tax collector, the point being is I have confidential information. It's called cybersecurity. But if it's the one thing that I worry about for the state of Texas, from an economic opportunity for each and every one of you as businesses, for whatever business that's going to be, water infrastructure funding, road infrastructure funding, broadband infrastructure funding, and making sure we tend to the basic elements that government's supposed to do. So with that, I will stop. It is good to see you. I know that my good friend, Chairwoman Pop, is going to say a few words, and there's a panel discussion, and so I don't want to take away from everybody, but I want to say thank you for what y'all do, what you do to contribute to the economy of the state of Texas, and I'm glad to be here with my good friend, Brooke, who we have known each other for a very long time. Brooke took care of me for many years, and you go, well, wait, what is Glenn going to confess to? How does she take care of him? Actually, she took care of me because she did my government relations with the legislature for many legislative sessions. So Brooke has got to be not just somebody that I counted on as an employee, but somebody who I consider a very dear friend and somebody who actually cares about the future of the state of Texas, not just for her family, but for your family. So, Brooke Pop.
Well, howdy, y'all. I'm Chairwoman Brooke Pop, and it's hard to follow. It's almost like going to water church with the controller here, but he is one of my dearest friends in the government. He taught me a lot about how to be a leader. He taught me never to have an entourage. Like, entourages mean that you're silly, right? Very. And always do the hard work. Never ask for help, just do it yourself. And just leave your ego behind. And that's why he is one of the greatest state office holders that we have right now. And you're a dear friend to me, and a huge proponent in Texas water. So immensely proud of you. I'm Brooke Popp. I'm chairwoman of the Texas Water Development Board. I know that most of y'all weren't expecting to see Legally Blonde here, but here I am. I was appointed in 2018 by the governor, and I became chairwoman in 2020 after a massive winter storm, which sent my chairman to the PUC, which was not fortuitous to me, but I love being chairwoman, so I'm not going to complain about it. But my small but mighty agency is tasked with making sure that the state has the water supply it needs for the next 50 years. It's an intense mission. We have 400 FTEs, and we have committed over $34 billion since our inception to water supply in the state of Texas. I don't think people understand how small but mighty my little agency is, but we work for Texas Water, and it's a really, really big deal. Glenn stole all of my talking points. We're growing by 1,300, 1283, yes, 1283, 1,283 Texans a day, and those are half coming from California and half baby Texans, and not a single one of them is bringing a drop of water with them. So we have to plan, and we have to plan carefully, and that's what my agency does. We, this last session, managed to get, hopefully, starting tomorrow, maybe $1 billion additional into water supply. And I promised Patrick that I wouldn't yell today. I've been yelling a lot, Glenn, in my speeches, because I feel like people aren't appreciating the necessity of water in the state of Texas. We have this double whammy of needing water supply because we're growing so fast, and then we have this aging infrastructure everywhere. You see the boil water notices, you just see the dilapidated infrastructure, and we don't have enough money for either right now. It's a really big deal, and I love the $1 billion that we might get, but the 2022 state water plan has a total capital cost of, Patrick? $80 billion, and that was based off of 2018 cost estimates. So for future water supply, to ensure that the state has the water they need 50 years in the future, that cost is, Representative Shine? $80 billion. We got $1 billion, maybe. It's not enough money, y'all. It's not. We need to actually put our heads up and really address what water infrastructure needs in the state of Texas. We pay a lot of attention to roads and broadband's great. Glenn's in charge of broadband now, so that's a big deal. We can't do any of that without water. Your communities can't thrive, the schools can't grow, the tax base can't grow without water. So I would really like for people to be a little bit more serious in funding water. And I'm not being critical, Representative Shine, because you guys did everything you could. But more attention needs to be paid, because sooner or later, the water's gonna dry out. And the Texas miracle depends on Texas water. So let's all really look at it, and I'm not yelling, Patrick. So I'm being really nice. Let's all really have a good, candid discussion about the infrastructure needs of this great state. And it's water, it's broadband, it's roads, but we have to have water. So With that, I will not yell, be very nice. And one of the questions I get asked most often, I know there's a bunch of women attorneys back there. Can y'all raise your hands? I think, well, I was told there's a bunch of female attorneys. Why I go by chairwoman rather than just chair. I'm the first woman chair of the Water Development Board since our inception in the 50s, so it was a really, really big deal. Thank you. So we had to have this spitballing session, as we do, when I became chair, and they had to figure out how to do, like, you know, the website and all the things. And Patrick was like, what are we going to be? Are we going to be chair? Are we going to be Madam Chair? Are we going to be chairwoman? What are we going to be? And he, because he's the greatest chief of staff ever, told me, you've got to lean into being chairwoman. You're the first ever. Let's celebrate it, and let's put it out there that women can be really great leaders. And the water world is, it's a hard world. Like, there's a lot going on with it. So let's put it out there that we're women and we're here, and really proud of the work we're doing. So with that, let's do this panel, Glenn.
So if I could invite Texas Comptroller Glenn Hagar back to the stage. And then Chairwoman Pop, I told you don't go too far, come on back up. We also have District 24 Senator Pete Flores that'll be joining us. House District 54 Representative Brad Buckley. House District 55 Representative Hugh Shine. Bell County Judge David Blackburn. The General Manager for Clearwater Underground Conservation District, Dirk Aaron. And then General Manager of WCID number 2, Ricky Garrett, will be joining us. So how about a round of applause for our panel?
Here, Pete, let's pull one. You sure. Drag one more down. Let's shift one. Is that all right? Yeah, that's fine with me. Yes, sir. I think we do now, right? Is that right? Good. Ricky, you got one? Okay, we need to get one. Okay.
Just put Ricky down here.
Okay. All right. We'll move Ricky. Okay.
We're partners in crime.
All right, what we'll do before we get started with any of the questions, we'll give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves and what their role is when it comes to water. And we'll start with you, Dirk.
Repeat the question. You want to know who and what we are and why we're here?
Yes, sir.
So those of you that know me, I manage the Groundwater Conservation District for Bell County, known as Clearwater. Prior to that, 30 plus years as a county extension agent, and I think I'm starting or finishing my 12th or 13th year with the district. I just want to put a caveat is that groundwater is a resource in this county, but in comparison to our surface, groundwater is a spittoon, and we've got a pretty large lake in Belton and Stillhouse, and so groundwater is just a piece of the puzzle. And so our role and the 5 elected people who are here, I see 3 of my board members are here, the 5. Our job is to find balance in getting people the water they deserve on the land that they own based on the day case. The attorneys in the room understand that. But finding that balance, get them what they need, but when you're a groundwater district, it's getting them what they need in a modified approach so that they don't take from their neighbors. And that balancing act is very scientific, and so it's a very complex job. Thinking about our Comptroller Hager, to credit him, he wasn't introduced as an Aggie, he is an Aggie. And after being a county extension agent for 30 years, I know one thing. I remember the first time I met him through our attorney, Mike Gershon, who is a close friend of his. I realized he was talking on the phone with our attorney and he was driving a tractor. So he is bona fide. And the second with Brooke, one of the things, she's also an Aggie. a mother. If you don't believe that, ask her. She'll show you pictures of her children.
You don't even have to ask.
And I think the two of them, I did not realize that she had worked for the comptroller back in his previous roles, and thank you both for being here.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ricky Garrett. I'm the general manager of Bell County WCID number 1. We serve Fort Cavazo, City of Killeen, City of Coppers Cove, City of Belton, City of Harker Heights, most everything east of Bell County of I-35 side, so I mean west of there. We are surface water. We have water plants on both Lake Steelhouse and Lake Belton. And I've been in the water service field for about 33 years or so now. And I think this in 21 was about my 6th master plan. And it was the first one in my career, my time, in which the 50-year horizon saw us not have enough water. And that was, it was kind of an eye-opener for me. And I've always been a beneficiary of planners and decision makers and people that showed a lot of fortitude in the 50s and 60s. And it's time for us as Texans to do the same thing. And the challenges are real. There's costs. There's we operate. I mean, within Bell County, I don't know how many water suppliers there are, but there's dozens. And 31, okay. I should have asked Dirk. I knew even Dirk would know. So there's 31 different visions and political challenges, even though we're all in the same region. And it's somehow we're going to have to get through and have a unified voice to be more effective with these bigger regional issues. And with that, I'll be quiet. So,
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm Pete Flores, your senator for District 24, representing Bell County and 12 other counties. I serve with some. First of all, I want to say you've got some. Representative Shine and Representative Buckley are two very, very outstanding state representatives, and I want to say that publicly. It's an honor to work with them and work with the members of the House. And Comptroller Hager, well, we've known him for a long time. Yeah, he even knew me back in the days when I had a neck, I think, but it's kind of gone now. As we get older. I serve on the Senate Finance Committee, amongst others, so I'm an appropriator, but also I serve on Senate Ag, Rural Affairs, and Water. I was working with our House members. We got the only 2 groundwater bills that the governor signed was through yours truly. And so I understand what the importance of groundwater is. Bell County itself, just as a note, has grown 21% since 2010, and the average growth in the country is about 2.7%. And this is happening all around our great state, as Comptroller Hager has said, that with 1,200 to 1,400 people coming a day to Texas that we know of. There's probably twice that number, but but this is something. They're coming here, and they're coming here because of our economy, and they're coming here because of our Texas. But no matter what we build, we have to have the infrastructure. Without water, it's good for people. It's good for quality of life. It's good for wildlife, and so working together with my colleagues. To get this constitutional amendment, that brings Proposition 6. And we encourage everyone to show up tomorrow and vote, but especially vote, for water. We look forward to, we got $1 billion in there. We wanted more, but we had to settle with 1. But we were originally after 10 was the original number, but we do need a lot more than that, and we'll talk about that some more. But thank you very much for allowing me to come and be in your presence today.
And Glenn Hager, Texas Controller. And give Pete applause first, sorry. And if y'all don't know, you need to watch out because he is not just a farmer, but always a farmer and always continues to be a game warden. So just watch out for Pete. But Glenn Hager, Texas
Doze but
Control.
never close, that's what.
David Blackburn, Bell County Judge. I think I know most people in the room here, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking, which is why is he up there? I also I was a former city manager in Killeen and Temple here in Bell County, as many of you know, county judge now. But I also sit on the Brazos Stew Water Board, Planning Board. There are several of those boards around the state based on water basins. That's the planning group that tries to put together the plan that I think both of our speakers this afternoon highlighted, is that state plan and that 50-year plan that looks out. And I want to underscore one thing out of that process, and happy to talk more about that. Dirk also sits on that water planning board from our county and our region. But one of the things I want to highlight for you is we're about to go through a planning process that we always do every 5 years. The state legislature mandates a lot of things in that plan. One of the things they mandated this go-around, which is new, is that we must identify what they call infeasible or unfeasible water strategies. And what that means, there's a whole long legislative definition of that, but what that means in short is that if you're a water purveyor or anybody who is involved in treatment or distribution of water, and you have identified a strategy to increase your capacity, if you haven't voted on that and committed some money to do it, that's going to be defined as infeasible. And it's going to come out of that water plan, is what's going to happen. That's about to start here in the next few months, and it's a very important process. I think it's a good process. I applaud the legislature for doing it because it'll help us get more real. And as the chairwoman, I think, alluded to and said directly, we need to get very real about our water situation. More people, more water. We cannot conserve our way out of the future. That's just not going to happen. So we've got to identify water strategies, infrastructure that is feasible, and we have to fund it. And I think the legislature took a good step this time to try to identify, to begin that demarcation line. We can't just put strategies on paper with no intention of funding them or executing on them. So that's a very good thing, I think. But it's going to be a little painful as we go through this next process. So just buckle up for that. But thanks for being here. Thanks, both of you, for being here.
Howdy, Brooke Pop, Chairwoman of the Texas Water Development Board, and man, David, you started your remarks with that. That's a deuce. Happy to be here. Glenn jokingly said that I'll show the pictures of my kids to anyone at any time, and this is true. I have a 13-year-old boy named Henry, who is very smelly and hormonal right now, and a 9-year-old sweet girl, Heidi. And right now she's sweet, but Glenn has told me they will flip sooner rather than later. But you know, I'm immensely proud of my kids, and I get asked quite a bit, like, why are you a public servant? What are you doing? Why are you spending so much time on this water issue? And it's because of my 2 kids, because I want them to have the economic engine that the state of Texas has been. I want them to have the opportunity. I want them to have a great state that we have had the opportunity to grow and thrive in. So it's for Henry and Heidi. And I know that Glenn feels the same with his 3 kids, and I know Dirk feels the same with his
Absolutely, yes.
grandkids. And I'm sure Representative Shine and Representative Buckley feel the same way. So everything we do, every night that we spend away from our families to ensure that we're working for a better Texas is a good day for us.
Thank you, Brooke. Clay Roaming. I don't know how many of you may remember that name, but in 1984, I was elected to the City Council in Temple, and Clay Roaming came over and said, water is a very important issue for Central Texas, and I want to share with you, if you will allow me, as much as I possibly can. And I was indoctrinated with Clay Roaming in the beginning of my political service on the council and later on in the legislature, because a few years later was elected to the legislature, and I had the privilege of working with Stan Schlueter. And I think, Dirk, that was when we created the Clearwater.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Underground Water Conservation District. So experience in this particular issue goes back for me a long ways with some extremely knowledgeable individuals. And I still have the book that Clay gave me called Waters of the Brazos. And he said, I want you to read this book from cover to cover because you're at a point in your life where you'll be able to make some decisions about water in Central Texas. And he was right. And have certainly carried that on when we created the Underground Water Conservation District. And we've had discussions about aquifer storage reservoirs and a number of different issues. And I know we've had a few little issues on western part of Bell County dealing with water issues with some of our neighbors. And that education and knowledge certainly has helped over the years to be prepared to be engaged in that debate. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague and let him share something.
All right. Thank you, Hugh. Brad Buckley, House District 54. I represent majority of Killeen and then north of Belton Lake and around the outskirts of the county in the rural areas, all the way back around through Salado and Youngsport. I represent an area that has more issues with groundwater in this county than any other region. We're not only I'm not only the representative, but I'm impacted by that. My home, my family ranch is all dependent entirely on groundwater, the Middle Trinity Aquifer. And I guess my first experience with water policy, my good friend Dirk Aaron called me and told me some of the issues that were going on, and I thought, well, man, I got an idea. Let's just file a little bill and let's see what could happen with that. And I learned very quickly when they tell you in Austin that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, that is no joke. And this little simple bill, Hugh warned me, by the way. He said, I don't know about that one. But you know what you have to do, I believe, or what Bell County needs to do at this point is we've had our issues with adjacent counties, and we've tried to work on issues together, and we do. I think the relationships are better. But it is beyond time for Bell County to have a whole county effort, an all-for-one, if you will, effort to find new sources of water, to improve infrastructure when it comes to our future. The groundwater, the Middle Trinity Aquifer remains under tremendous duress. And if you want to see sort of water issues in real time, just think back over the several months that we've had with the drought. And you've seen things happen. You've seen a lake in Stillhouse that looks like something I've never seen in my 57 years on this planet. And so it's high time that we join together to make important decisions where we can bring more water to Bell County, to use every bit of technology that's available out there, and sort of stand up for ourselves. So I look forward to doing that.
All right. Well, thank y'all very much. So we do have some questions from the audience, so we'll go through those, and whoever wants to take a stab at them is more than welcome. The first question: our state's water issues are bigger than any one purveyor, municipality, or region. Will the state get more involved and or prioritize regional and statewide water projects? And if so, what does that look like?
I'll take that. Yes, the state's water issues are massive. They seem insurmountable at times. But I will tell you that the state of Texas is the most proactive and innovative state when it comes to water policy than any other state in the country. I go around and speak to different groups constantly, and I know Glenn does too. And no other state has a state water plan. No other state is looking 50 years in advance. No other state has 16 regional water planning groups that are all determining how they can get the water they need to grow. I'm immensely proud of the efforts that we've made, but there's more work that needs to be done. And again, I will come back to the fact that we need to invest more in water infrastructure. We need to invest more in water supply, and we need to invest more in our deteriorating water infrastructure, primarily in West Texas and South Texas.
That's where where we're feeling the pain with the infrastructure. So with that, would you like to jump in?
The only thing I would add to that is Central Texas, because of the growth out of Austin and Round Rock and Georgetown, we already have a pipeline from Stillhouse down to Georgetown. VRA, been in discussions with them. They'd like to add a pipeline from Belton to Stillhouse. I understand their bathtub theory. We've had multiple conversations about that, you know, and then the work that they're doing just west of Houston as well. So our real challenge right now is in Central Texas is all the growth coming north from Austin and Round Rock. And cooperation and a willingness to work with us, because I think we're willing to work with them, but we've got some resources that they're short of, and they want what we have, and we need to protect that.
The only thing I would add is just, yes, obviously the state has to play a major role, and this constitutional amendment is a major role as a state, us as state taxpayers as another commitment. There have been significant commitments in the past, whether it's $2 billion in water infrastructure funding, which was a constitutional amendment many years ago that we manage those assets in Water Development Board, or what's called evergreen funding of $6 billion back when I was in the state Senate and we passed that. So the point is there's tranches of money that are added into the system at some point from the state level. But what we cannot remove or lose sight of is, as the judge was mentioning on the regional water planning process, that, you know, it is so critical that local communities know your communities better than I do sitting in Austin, or legislators, not to speak for the members up here, but I'd assume they would say yes. I mean, they know their constituency, but the other districts. And so my point being is that marriage is critical. And that's why I think the state, many decades ago, taking that process of that, it has to be driven as what are the strategies and the plans and what pieces work better, because as we all know, as we move from one region of the state to the next, it is very different. And those strategies that work in one part of the state won't work well in the others. And I just want to, you know, make a point to that local planning process is so critical.
And just a real quick example of that, and I agree with what everyone has said so far on the state role in water and water planning, water development, and water infrastructure. But the state simply cannot do it alone. And really, I don't believe the state is the point on this. I think the point on it, and I don't think the point is the local purveyor either. Some of these issues are too big for a local purveyor of water to tackle. They just are. I'll give you a quick example of that. Aquifer storage and recovery. We commissioned a study, I say we, Bell County along with several partners a couple of years ago, commissioned a study on ASR because we wanted to see if that would work in our area. Some areas of the state it'll work, some areas it will not work. It just, the geology isn't there. You can't put the water in and get it back out. Well, we found through that study that there are some places that it will work in our county, in our area. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a bullet. And so we pushed that out to, how many water purveyors did we say we had, Dirk? I forgot how many, but a bunch of water purveyors. None of them could tackle that project because it's an expensive project, or projects by themselves. It's going to take a regional effort and a regional collaborative effort working with state partners and working with local partners to make that a reality. And I think, when I think about water infrastructure and the needs over the next 50 years, there isn't one entity that's going to have the solution for that. It's really going to take a regional collaborative effort working with state and local partners to get it done. And ASR is just one example of that.
Good judge.
May I? Yeah. And I agree with everything I've heard. A lot of times, you know, you're exactly right, Judge. It takes the local entities working together to handle the issues. But a lot of times we deal in Glenn, we talked about, I remember those bills way back through the water bills. So we not only have to put the short-term needs as they get to get addressed, but we also got to remember the long term. Where are we going? And I think the constitutional amendment tomorrow and Senate Bill 28 and STR 75 dealt with the original vision of those bills was to stop moving water from one aquifer to another aquifer, like that's being done, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and looking at our existing infrastructure and how much water we're losing daily to just to leakage of an old system, and how we envision ourselves using the resource as we continue to grow and changing perhaps some behaviors. But the other thing is to be looking at boldly ahead to desalinization. The Israelis have done some great work on desalinization, and we have Gulf of Mexico right over there. But they say, well, it's expensive. I say it's more expensive not to have the water in the future than looking at the desalinization. Or, as Chairman Perry has said, we look at other sources of pipelining it from Louisiana, who has a lot of water, instead of taking from the, so this is all a big picture. It's an effort that not only handles short term, but we also have to have in mind the long term. So I foresee that there will be more money invested as it becomes available, because not because we want to, it's because we have to. But a lot of times we're very reactive, but with water we need to be proactive.
I actually love that. I always say that government is inherently reactive, but occasionally we get some innovative and proactive solutions from that. And I will say that with desalination, especially seawater desalination, TWDB has a $221 million commitment for planning down in Corpus. And we're actually headed to Corpus in 2 days to go check it out and see how everything is going. But it's the future, especially for that area that needs a secondary water source. And I'm really excited to see where that innovation and technology can lead, because I think as these technologies become more regular, the cheaper they will get and the more efficient they will get. So very excited about that.
The military is on the cutting edge with our Navy. You may not realize this, but an aircraft carrier generates nearly 500,000 gallons of water on the aircraft carrier. And we do that across the Navy. So the technology is there, and we use that. And that's why when there are disasters out there, we send ships to those disaster areas, because we're there for humanitarian reasons, because we can provide the water. We can also provide the electricity that they generate there as well. But the desalination aspect of things, the technology is already there. The Navy has developed it, and it's something that we can just put our hands on and adopt. And a lot of times, some of the innovations that we end up putting into practice have come from the military, just like here at Fort Hood, or Fort Cavazos now, and what the Navy has done as well. And I think the desalination aspect is a direction that we certainly need to start focusing on.
If I can just add a few positives to that, but drill down locally the impact of these visions and discussions. Judge Blackburn talked about ASR. Ricky and his board have initiated this resiliency on behalf of Fort Cavazos. That's the purpose of that pilot program that many of you in the room with the chambers, economic development corporations, through the leadership of our judge and through our board, we were all able to coalesce $600,000 to help that pilot program. That's what Senator Flores is speaking to, is how you make things happen locally. But more importantly, though, there is a paradigm shift, and people are, I said 31 local water purveyors. So you're thinking in Bell County, we got 31 people billing and selling water. Well, of that, we have 5 substantial wholesale water purveyors, such as WCID #1, which is the biggest. But yet these small rural water supply corporations are represented by people in their local community who want to keep their water rates low. And so at some point in time, the elephant in the room can be, you got to pay to move forward, such as occurred in this county. Those of you that know the name, Bill Yao, you know the name. We talked about these names. Go back to his board back in the early 60s that made these big leaps with the help of federal dollars and then applied that locally. I think the city of Temple making their move. So one is looking at storing extra water from their take-or-pay contract, treating it, but the city of Temple's looking at storing and reuse water for an industrial complex. Wow. Is it cheap? Absolutely not. Is it expensive? Absolutely. But we have a paradigm shift that needs to change in the way people use water. I was with a family the other day that had 15 plus hundred, well, more like 5,000 square feet of irrigated lawn, and they're upset because they're curtailed all summer. How many of you have heard that? And these 31 water purveyors, they're actually moving water into 5 counties. It's not about Bell County when you look at those. They just get their water from here and push it into those. Some serve half and half. One, Bell Milam Falls Rural Water Supply Corporation. Guess what? They serve Bell, Milam, and Falls County rural people. Huge. So we got to think beyond just that and get people, these same people might buy 12 cases of bottled water a month, but they want to keep their water rate at $65 minimum when they're paying double that or triple or 100 times that for bottled water. And so there's a need for those of us to communicate locally how complex this is. I commend the judge for taking the lead on the ASR feasibility study and then supporting the vision that Ricky and his board has and our board has in terms of incentivizing ASR. We have no regulatory role over ASR, no matter what anybody thinks. We just want to be a groundwater district that doesn't create speed bumps. We want to be encouraging and then fund and use our financial resources to support the scientific endeavor that it takes to do it right. Last thing, we are a country of innovators. That's been said. Innovation of inland desal we're on the cusp of that, and will it ever mean anything to us? East side of this county has a lot of brackish water that's just laying there in the Edwards Aquifer down dip areas. So there's resources. We just have to be patient with a sense of urgency, pants on fire to get it done before many of us tooth out. Anybody know what tooth out means? I don't know.
Tooth out.
I'll add to that, Dirk. I'll say something. I might be canceled for this, but who knows? I don't run for office like y'all do. So we have dramatically undervalued water in the state of Texas for far too long. Infrastructure costs money. Water costs money. We can't grow without water, so it's time that we actually put on our big girl and big boy pants and really talk about how much water infrastructure truly costs for the state of Texas. It is an economic driver. It is incredibly important for our health, and I think, again, I might be canceled for this, but water rates have been very, very low for a very long time, and it's probably time that we all look at rate studies and really determine what our areas, our 16 regional water planning groups, really need in terms of rates. And I know rates aren't sexy. No one likes them. No one likes to talk about them, but it's our reality. So, Glenn, you want to add to that?
I'm tooted out already, or whatever Dirk said. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a lot more questions, but we may only get one or two more. So this one's coming back to Bell County. So there is a substantial local concern that water in Bell County is viewed by many simply as a supply for Williamson County. Is there anything you can tell us that would assure us that our water will serve our citizens and not just be means to an end for someone else?
I got elbows from both sides saying, this is you, this is you. Here's my short answer to that. No. That's my short answer. I'm going to be very apolitical or unpolitical too, I guess. It may get canceled. That's okay. How many people in this room think that the water in Lake Belton is owned by the city of Belton? Anybody? It's not. Everybody on Facebook thinks that. That is very true. I mean, if you go to the internet, you'll find it. But it's not. The state of Texas owns all the water, the surface water out there. That's who owns this. The river authorities manage that water, and then there's contracts that they have for that water, and there are water rights out there. And I forgot, Dirk will remember better than I, but I think in Lake Belton alone, I think there are 13 or 14 different entities that own water rights in Lake Belton, and half of those are outside of Bell County. They're someplace else. So they have bought that water, so to speak. And all they need is transmission lines to access their water. The challenge that I see, and that we've had lots of conversations with David Collingsworth at the Brazos River Authority and his staff, and through the planning groups, what we're trying to do is manage, again, demand that we see eventually outstripping capacity. That's where we're heading. And we don't want that to happen, but in terms of the water, the surface water that you see in these reservoirs, there's a misconception out there that that's our water. That water has been contracted for. And for some people, they contracted those water rights decades ago and have been paying for it whether they use it, whether they take it or not. And so we're working through that. Now, having said all of that, we certainly want to take every effort and every step that we can to ensure that we have the water that we need today and tomorrow in Bell County, and for all the water purveyors and ultimately the population in Bell County. And I can assure you that all of the folks in Bell County that are associated with water planning or water delivery or water treatment or water rates are all working toward that end. They are all working toward that end.
I think if I can add, and I was curious if this topic would come up, and as we were sitting here earlier, it made me think about back when I was in the state legislature. I had Houston to the east, Austin to the north, and San Antonio to the west. And so, in other words, point is I had a very large rural district that had various sources of water, whether it was groundwater, whether that was river water. But the point being is, those three metropolitan areas had a straw that wanted to take water from my district and move it out there. Now, again, that water that is technically under your property per se or in a county flows through, flows under. And you know, obviously with a reservoir, who has that? And I think the bigger really issue, if you look at it from a different angle, is you don't want the most economical, cost-effective sources of water to be taken from a community and then they have no economic opportunities in the future. That's the biggest issue. That really is. And so that was kind of the angle that I took as a rural legislator, that wait, there's going to be economic opportunities and growth in my district, and if it's all gone, we have nothing left. And I think that's really the whole sum and the point, in my opinion, of us having this conversation today and continuing it hopefully after today, after tomorrow's election, and continuing through. And so how do we, as either state, local, regional planning, make sure that, I wouldn't say backfill, but in other words, we have economic opportunities throughout much of the state of Texas too. And I think that's really the crux of the issue. Whether it's ownership of this county's water or that, it doesn't really necessarily apply, but what does apply is you want to have economic opportunities for yourself in a community and that opportunity going forward. And that's the bigger issue, in my opinion, when you look at it from that prism.
Just one quick point. One of the things I've learned over the last few years really digging into this issue is really as BRA goes, we go. And so the investments we can make on behalf of BRA, and whether it be, we may disagree over some of the fundamentals of pipelines and things like that, but with the way that they manage water, you know, Allen's Creek Reservoir downstream is good for us. We'll probably never lay eyeballs on it. I couldn't drive to it if you paid me to.
I can take you.
Meet you there next week. The fact that Dow Chemical has invested in a private reservoir that is going to harness, I don't know, 10,000 acre feet of water that they'll collect from runoff that they won't need from BRA. And so, you know, I talked earlier about a whole of Bell County approach, and obviously, what I mean by that is we have to stand up for ourselves, but we also have to understand that good things that happen in the BRA system is not necessarily at our detriment. And so, you know, that's the way I try to think about it. And then finally, on groundwater management, because it's so important to the constituents that I represent, you know, Clearwater is a model agency for managing groundwater. They deal with science. They don't pick winners or losers, but they tell you the truth. And we know what is happening in parts of Bell County when it comes to the Middle Trinity Aquifer and where that water's going. And so, you know, groundwater districts have various reputations across the state. And just like any other thing, I tell people, just like veterinarians, that's what I do for a day job. There's some good ones and there's some terrible ones out there. Well, I'm telling you, we have a great groundwater district here that is standing up for those of us that depend on the aquifers, but also understands that there's a property right issue and we need to be able to contribute to economic development. And so if we understand that BRA needs to be successful and that Clearwater needs to be successful and then a whole of county approach needs to be successful, that's the only pathway to get to something that will even look like a future of water for my grandson Leo, who turns 3 today.
All right, well, thank y'all very much. So we have a lot more questions. Unfortunately, being respectful of everyone's time, we're not going to be able to get to those. So some of the panelists may be able to stay after and answer those questions one-on-one, but how about a round of applause for our panelists today?
And let's give a big hand to Kelly Brown for keeping all these guys civil up here, too. Right? No, we really do appreciate all of you taking valuable time out of your schedules to physically be here. I mean, this means a lot to all of us, and we thank everybody up here on this panel. I know there are a lot more questions about water. There should be. There's a lot more we need to know about water here in Bell County across the state of Texas. So I'm going to give you a little nugget here. On the 14th of November, 8:30 in the morning to 4 o'clock p.m., all day water. We've got the 22nd Annual Bell County Water Symposium Clearwater puts on with some sponsors as well. It's going to be at our Cadence Bank Center in Belton. You need to reserve. Write this number down, 254-933-0120. A lot of these same faces will be there. We'll have all kinds of information on what is going on with Bell County's water. So that'll give you a full day to ask those questions. Some of our panelists have to go. Some of them are going to be able to stay so you can ask questions afterwards. Thank all of you for being here. Thank all the panelists, all of y'all in the community, our leaders out there that are making sure our water rights are taken care of and make sure that we've got some water to drink, not just whiskey in the future. And don't forget, tomorrow is Election Day. Get out and vote. Thank you all very much. God bless you. Have a safe trip home. Thank you very much.
At Mountain View Productions, we want to give you and your business peak visibility.